Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Today, I will be speaking on the topic of empowering and protecting children online and their online safety journey. But before I do, a little bit about me. So, my name is Zinet KEMAL. You've seen me in the previous stage. I'm a wife and a mom of four. I'm also a multi-award-winning cybersecurity advocate, currently working as a cloud security engineer at a Fortune 500 organization in the US. I'm also a 3 times published award-winning children's book author, including on children's online safety and cyber careers, titled Oh No, Hacked Again, and See Yourself in Cybersecurity. I'm a TEDx speaker and a board member at a nonprofit. So I just recently graduated from Georgia Tech with a master's degree in cybersecurity, and as a mother and as someone working in the industry, I'm particularly passionate about protecting children and educating and empowering children about online safety for, our kids and the kids in our life. So I would like to start by telling you a quick story. Like I said in the intro, I'm a mom of four. Young kids between the ages of 13 and 4 years old. And in the midst of the pandemic, just a few years back, I witnessed 2 of my kids on different occasions got hacked while gaming online and leaving them devastated. And I'm not exaggerating when I say devastated. So it was that time where everyone was staying home, learning and working from home, so the online games were the avenue for them for education, entertainment, and also socializing. So they would have their school friends and sometimes cousins in those online games. The first incident began with my oldest son, and he was 10 at that time. So one day he came to the dinner table, very sad and not talking, barely eating, so he wouldn't tell us what happened until his 2 little sisters spilled the beans and said that he got hacked and lost control of your gaming account. Before he spoke, he started to cry and looked so helpless. So he was 10 at the time, like I said, and then he goes on to tell us that he doesn't even know what happened and how it happened, but he wanted to reset his password. But the next thing he knew is that he couldn't log back in, and he asked the person who took over his account to give it back, but he said he already changed his avatar and his name, and it's all gone. So, and he continued to cry, and he said, I loved my avatar, and I'll never get it back, and my profile game, and it's all gone. So his 2 little sisters, after listening to the story in horror at the same time, said, so mean, and they couldn't help anything. Then, as parents, we ended up purchasing the digital currency that was lost to replace his account. But then he was still sad because he said that, even if I'm creating a new account, I can never get my avatar. There are limited time editions that went off sale that I couldn't get back in. So then it happened again. And this time with my daughter, because she trusted someone, a friend, and she shared her password with that friend. But these incidents are not isolated cases. And did you know that a staggering 12 million children in the United States alone are exposed to cyber risks? And between 2015 to 2020, 6 million children have experienced cyber threats. And to make matters worse, I don't know about other parts of North America, but in the US, less than half of US students, K to 12, receive cyber-related education. We have the tech classes, but we don't have cyber-related education. So as per Digital Intelligence Institute, which measures child online safety around the world, through the Child Online Safety Index in 30 countries, 60% of 8 to 12-year-olds have experienced at least one cyber risks, meaning cyberbullying, online sexual behavior, or reputational risk, etc. These 2 incidents and another potential online predator attempt with my oldest son made me realize that we as parents are so quick to connect them to the internet, give them all the gadgets, the tablets and computer, but we fail to invest the time and effort in educating them how to navigate it safely. So when it comes to online safety, we often assume that our kids are safe as long as they're home, right? They're home and behind closed doors. What could happen? They're under the same roof, but we have given them this window to the world that we don't make the effort to educating them how to navigate it safely. So as a mom, I thought I was doing everything right. to protect my kids, but witnessing the harsh reality that hit home with my kids with the incidents, and then the various social media groups, parenting social media groups, similar stories shared, like my kids got hacked, my kids got hacked. So as a parent and guardians, we resort to taking control of their internet access, or grounding them and taking control or limiting internet access in order to protect our kids. And I know I'm guilty of this because I've done that multiple times. The more time children spend online connected to the internet, we know that they become more vulnerable. And according to the Center for Parenting Education, kids and teens between the ages of 8 to 18 spend about 44.5 hours each week in front of digital screens. And another source from National Cybersecurity Alliance confirms this as well. The kids in that same age group spend 7 hours and 38 minutes per day online. So let's say if a child sleeps 8 hours per night, let's hope they do. That means that one half of the time that the child is awake is spent online. And in another research conducted by Pew Research Center just 2 years ago, 6 in 10 say that their child began engaging with a smartphone before the age of 5. And I thought, well, if this is happening with my kids, and it's also likely happening to other families, and I need to do something about it. And that's when, in the midst of the pandemic, that I decided to write children's book to educate kids about online safety and basic cybersecurity hygiene, hence The Birds of Oh No Hacked Again, which is one of my children's books. So now I want us to look at some of the risks to children's online safety. In order to empower them, we need to educate ourselves on what are some of the risks. So oversharing. Children's sharing personal information online or oversharing has serious negative consequences because children may not understand the risks. They expose themselves when they trust others and share information such as their location, their school names, home addresses, or passwords. You would think, who would share a password? But one of my daughters, driven by her pure trust, shared her password to an online gaming friend, because they label everybody as friend, even if they're strangers, who promised to add more digital currency to her gaming account. Little did she know that this seemingly harmless request from a friend was a deceitful plan to seize control of her entire gaming account. Now, think about this. If this can happen in gaming, what could occur if this password were to unlock something more significant? And do children truly understand the true nature of individuals that they encounter online? And with the advancement of new technology, we're hearing evolution of artificial intelligence, and now with a more accessible use of chatbots such as ChatGPT, Bing, and Bard, children's feeding such personal information into this AI exposes kids to risks ranging from privacy and safety issues. So we need to educate and remind children that, because they're kids, they need reminders all the time, as we do as adults too, that anything shared on the internet is there to stay forever, like forever. So even if you delete it. So speaking of oversharing, have you ever stopped to think about the extent to which children's lives are exposed online? Did you know that by the time kids reach the age of 13, their pictures have been shared online a shocking 1,300 times? And you would think it's their social media, right? But what's truly alarming is that a significant portion of this online trail is not as a result of a child's own social media usage. Rather, it's the consequence of what we adults, parents, and guardians have shared about them. And it's called sharenting. And it's a thing. Sharenting is the act of oversharing personal information about our children online, their milestones. We don't think of it often without fully comprehending the potential repercussions. And yet again, I'm guilty of this because I'm a mom of 4 and I do that. And pretty much most of us are. And you might ask, how do I know? Because a new study found that 68% of American parents share photos of their kids online. And think about it, their faces, their cherished memories scattered across the vast internet without their control or consent. But it doesn't stop there. An average person in UK, by the time they turn 18, a mind-boggling 70,000 pieces of information about them are readily available and shared. So what it means is that it's a digital footprint that leaves them vulnerable for exploitation, manipulation, and identity theft. As per a study from a university in the US, Carnegie Mellon University, kids under the age of 18 are 51 times more likely to become victims of identity theft than their parents. And by 2030, sharenting, which you might think is a relatively new term, will be the cause for 2/3 of identity fraud cases affecting children. Let that sink in for a moment. If we are not mindful of the information we share, we inadvertently become enablers of a future where their identities might be at risk. Cyberbullying is another one, because with children's widespread use of social media and messaging platforms, another threat in our online space is cyberbullying, because it affects 9 million children in the United States alone. And the impact of insults, harassments, and rumors online can negatively affect a child's mental well-being. According to a study shared on Journal of Medical Internet Research, young victims of cyberbullying are twice as likely to attempt suicide and self-harm. And there's a story that came out just last year. A 15-year-old boy with big dreams from Chicago took his own life after a relentless cyberbullying from his own school peers. And the school couldn't stop it. So as an adult and parents and guardians, we need to be mindful of the signs of cyberbullying, such as it could be abrupt change in behavior, aversion to devices, or withdrawal from social activities, so that we'll be able to proactively intervene and protect children. The other one, the next one is online grooming, which poses a significant danger to children because predators assume false identities. They slowly earn the trust of children online to manipulate and exploit them for harmful purposes. When my son was 10 years old, and this is also in the heights of the pandemic, he made an online gaming buddy who claimed to be a 13-year-old boy, and they played games online together. But this individual gradually started coercing my son into sharing private video calls without telling his family. He started isolating him because that's what they target, online predators, like broken families, they like to isolate. And he was referring to him as, "I'm your big brother, like you don't need anybody." So this finally turned into threatening. That's when it came to our attention, because he threatened to hack his family's Wi-Fi and IP address if my son didn't comply. And I still remember to this day how my son was terrified of the situation. He came and told us, "Don't worry, I blocked the person." I read all the chats, and it was all the signs of those online predators that I've seen in those chats that he was engaged. So it was a wake-up call as a parent, at least, to guide my kids to limit interactions to known friends and family members, and most importantly, emphasizing that those avatars and profile pictures, it could be really anyone looking to harm them. Like, you cannot tell. They could be putting any profile pictures on there. One of the last threats that I would like to discuss is the rise of phishing and scams targeting children, adding another layer of concerns, because fraudsters employ deceptive techniques such as fake links in emails or messages, as we struggle as adults, to trick children into sharing sensitive information. And sadly, even the online gaming world, where our kids spend considerable amount of time, is not immune to this danger. 2 years ago, again, one of my other daughter became a victim to a deceptive survey link that falsely promised to a free online gaming, digital currency. And this disguised phishing link that seemed to have come from the gaming platform itself resulted in her account being compromised and loss of her entire gaming account as a result. So this incident is also a big reminder that to be intentional in educating our kids, on the concept of phishing and scams, on how scammers use different techniques or offers, and to remind them to think twice before clicking a link. I know that that's also a struggle with adults, but the kids are not immune. We think that they don't get it, but they do get it, and they get hacked. And I've seen countless stories like that from parents on social media groups. And then also to talk to a trusted adult before they click any untrusted link. So We know the risks. How do we start empowering our children to understand the risks and some of the security measures? And these are some of the tips that we should take as parents and guardians, which I'll go into it quickly on to each one of them. The first one is establishing an open and regular communication with your child about online safety, or the kids in your life, right? It's incredibly important to have an age-appropriate conversation about what a family values, because for each family, a value is different. So having that conversation about what a family values and why certain content isn't appropriate for their age group, and setting expectations that what is secure while browsing online, how to avoid clicking suspicious phishing links that seem to be sent from legitimate source, reminding not to share passwords, trusting no one, most importantly, making sure that kids know that they can always come to a parent if something happens that makes them uncomfortable. And I think that's very key. If we don't open that line of communication open, they try to resort to any problem that they may run into, and that's gonna cause more problems. So always establish that open line of communication. Parental involvement is very important. I say, we gotta show interest in what our kids do and what they do, not just give them the tablets and connect them to the internet and leave them to handle it for themselves. As a mother of 4, I absolutely don't have time to sit down and play games with them. They tried so many times. They created an account for my husband and myself to play with them, because somebody's got to make dinner and wash the dishes. I just don't have time for that. But try checking what apps they're using, any gaming platforms, as well as any direct messaging that they may be using, because those are usually different from the gaming platforms, so that they can chat while gaming. And then another simple step we can take as a parent is check on the privacy setting for the apps that they use, ensuring that they use their actual age on some of the gaming social media groups, because they're smart. They try to add, I found my 7-year-old putting 13-year-old, so I had to remind her that she's still 7, because we need to take advantage of those default age-appropriate security settings that are already built in on those gaming platforms. And then show interest and involve yourself in conversation about what goes on. I try to listen to them from afar, from the kitchen, and just, use the words that they use, happen to steal from them. And I think it makes a difference in terms of them being comfortable to come to us and talk to us about some of the things that they see and hear online. The other one is parental controls. Even though I would prioritize establishing a line of communication open with kids, as a second line of defense, I do believe that it's important to supervise and regularly check kids' use of the internet. That's something we try to use at home, blocking inappropriate sites from the router, or enabling content filtering to avoid those contents that might be inappropriate. People may not know that those capabilities are sometimes available from the internet service providers. I never use any parental control softwares, but I know that there are trusted ones out there recommended by online safety experts. So it's vital to have that balance between protecting a child's online safety and then also the privacy, and then teaching them how to be independent on their own. Screen time is another thing which was a challenge, especially during COVID time and beyond, because this is important for younger kids, because these games, it's easier to get lost in the games, and each kid is different. While my younger daughters are easier to unplug for them when it's time, but the older one, they need a tap on the shoulder to say that it's time to move on to the next thing. You can also do other activities that doesn't involve being online, or just play outdoors or something like that. So it's important as a parent that you have some level of control over the amount of time your child has available, because as parents, we are there to remind and guide them. We also have that data that we mentioned earlier about how they spend a considerable amount of time online. And that's a lot of time. Avoid sharing personal information, because you don't know who's behind those profiles and avatars. It's critical to remind them not to share any personal information about themselves, and when we say personal information, explaining to them that your school names, your location, passwords, those are very important to protect, because a 12-year-old boy who appears a 12-year-old girl could really be an older man looking to harm your children, because you can never tell from the avatars and the profile pictures. So listen, I changed my approach as a parent, especially after those incidents, and I'm more intentional about starting a conversation or prompting my kids to share about their online experiences. They come and tell me things that that they see themselves. They even come and tell me like some of the peers and the mistakes and choices that their friends make now. My second grader recently told me that two of her closest friends gave her their passwords on a sticky note to check something for them on their behalf on their gaming accounts. And I don't know when did she become the IT support of the class, but her response proved to me that they're going to be okay and they're paying attention. She said that even if I'm your friend and you trust me, you don't ever share your password with me. And she shared the experience that her older sister got into and how she got hacked. Even if you trust me, don't do that. And that's a win coming from a second grader. She not only understood, but she also educated her peers and reminded them what the right thing to do. So we are better off educating and empowering them and setting them up for success, because that's what's going to be helpful for them in the future. So call to action would be for parents, educators, and policymakers that you might be here is that for parents and guardians, like I said, engage in an open and routine conversation with your children and the children in your life about cyber risks and online safety. Connect with them by sharing stories that they can easily relate to, share examples, children's books written on the topic, telling stories and using interactive games on how to practice good online hygiene. And ask them about what game they have been playing, like what are their favorite apps, become a part of what interests them to establish that trust. And as an adult, lead by example, because kids see what we do. They don't hear what we told them, they see what we do. So be a good role model so that they can emulate the best practices and online behavior accordingly, so that they can grow up to become responsible digital citizens. And second, for educators, I know I shared the data earlier about how in US, half of the students, less than half of students in education K-12 receive cyber-related education. So champion, if there are educators in this audience, champion for a formal K-12 cybersecurity education on children's online safety in schools, because that's where we should be starting. And then invest in child-friendly cybersecurity resources, children's books on the topic, and then also professional development for teachers, because that's really critical. And lastly, for policymakers, advocate for effective regulation that protect children's online safety and privacy. Last but not least, I have a few resources that I listed here on how to keep children safe online, raising digital citizens, and a couple of children's cybersecurity books, and 10 online safety tips for gaming, because a lot of our kids are gamers, let's face it. And thank you so much for listening in. I'll be here for question and answer, or just to continue the conversation afterwards. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.